Hello together and welcome to my channel. So a couple of days ago I did a video called Natural Law versus Positive Law, and I just got a response, which is actually a question from the synergist, and he said, what are your thoughts on how we would go about fixing it? And so he is referring to the problem that I described in this video, which is that in our current society in the West, we are moving more and more towards positive law, which means people using the law as a tool to force other people to behave in a certain way that they would like personally. It's not the same as natural law, which is the idea that there is some like universal law of how human beings should interact, how they should behave towards each other and how they shouldn't, and that the law of our society should represent this natural law, and it's not the right way to go about to just make the law as you personally want, but you should make it to follow as closely as you can manage the natural law that is discovered and not dictated by man. And so I wanted to write an answer, and then I kept thinking more and more things, and so I decided to make another video. And so one of the things that I was thinking, I was just wondering what the title of this video would be, but I have to figure that out later. So one of the things that I would say is I feel it's very important that more people become aware of this problem and come to agree that our law should actually follow the natural law instead of being like a tool for different groups of people trying to make other groups of people behave in some way that they personally desire. So I think for me the first big thing is to talk about this to other people, to make more people aware of the fact that this is actually a problem, and maybe also explain to them why it is a problem. Which I can try to go into that later. I will see what comes up, if I can come up with something useful. But I would definitely say don't waste your time on politics, because politics to me is very strongly today just the back and forth pushing of positive law. It's just different groups of people trying to use the law as a tool to get what they want. And if you get involved in that, then you can waste all your energy and basically achieve nothing. So that's my sense. And I don't think there is much difference if you vote or if you don't. For a long time, like many years, when I was still a more like subscribed anarcho-capitalist, which I'm not really anymore, even though I still see many of the points that the anarcho-capitalists criticize, but I don't think their solution is too simple. It's an ideology. It's not a real comprehensive view of the world. So I learned that thanks to Jordan Peterson. So yeah, but nowadays I take like 5 to maximum 10 minutes to vote. I just take the stuff, I look at it really quickly, I go, yeah, okay, this, think it's good, think it's bad, yes, no, and then I just send it in, and I don't make a big fuss about it, because I think maybe these 5 minutes are well spent. Like if a lot of sensible people at least kind of roughly over the thumb vote, then maybe it has a small effect. I don't know, I'm not so sure about that it does, because yeah, I'm quite cynical about this, even though I'm also quite thankful for the democracy that we have in the West and the one that I live in here in Switzerland. because with all its problems, it's still better than all the other systems, and so that's also part of the reason that I don't want to boycott it completely. So I want to kind of make my small part in it, but I don't believe that getting involved in the political process is likely to bring a solution, because the political process is quite warped around the wrong question even. And there is this great saying, if they can get you to ask the wrong question, they don't care what the answer is. And I think that's very characteristic of our political situation today, and maybe it has always been, I don't know. But the thing that I keep trying to do when people start to involve me in political discussions is to try to get down to the core principles and say, yeah, I see this problem, but actually the core principle of this discussion is this. So for example, there is somewhat of a discussion here in Switzerland about father leave. If you get a child, you should get like, I don't know how many weeks of paid vacation for that. There's a big discussion back and forth, but so you could say, okay, what's the actual principle, the actual moral or ethical or philosophical principle that this is just one instance of? And so that would be something like, how can you have a job, a demanding job, maybe even both partners have a demanding job and a family at the same time? And so this is a problem that we don't really have a solution to here in the West, a good solution. Or even further down, you could say, okay, but the actually important discussion would be, what are the areas of life where the society should justly interfere with the individual's choice of how he wants to organize his life? Because that to me is a discussion that is never had, and that is to me a absolutely fundamental discussion that goes also into the whole natural law problem. It is, okay, which areas of life should even be discussed publicly? In which areas of life is it actually valid for society, or not valid, but just for society to take an influence on my personal choices, on the personal choices of everyone? And so that's, I think, the most important thing, to get more people away from the political hick-hack, as we say in German, like the back and forth hacking and fighting and making a little bit advance and then a little bit retreat, and they get a little bit more money for social security or for welfare, or a little bit less taxes, or like, yeah, I get it, but you don't get anywhere with these trench fighting discussions. What's important is to get more people to think about the fundamental principles, and to just get more people to wake up to the fact that justice is actually what the law should be about. The law should be about justice, and not about one group of people getting their will to the expense of another group of people by using the force of the state as a tool. And so I think that's probably my answer. I think we are still at the stage where more people need to become aware of this fact. And as more people become aware of this problem, and of that it would be better if it weren't positive law, but more if our society would lean more towards natural law, then things will start to change automatically. Because I am quite convinced, even though I think it's an unbelievably harsh and brutal statement, but I'm still quite convinced that the state of a society gets shaped or formed or created through the moral choices and actions of each individual within that society. And so as more people start to desire natural law instead of positive law, then our society will also start to shift in that direction, and I think will start to become freer and more prosperous and better to live in, even better than it already is. And so I think that's my answer to this question. Now, I want to try to kind of pull together my thoughts on why positive law is a problem, and I'm not sure if it will turn out well. If it won't, then I will just cut it out. But I feel, and I've touched on this a little bit in the other video, I think that people could agree to follow a law that is just and fair and morally right, even if it means a material disadvantage or is a bit uncomfortable for them personally. So I think people could agree to follow a law that is just, even if it means some personal discomfort for them at some times in their life. Because they would say, yes, this is uncomfortable, but the law is just and I will follow it because I also want everyone else to follow it because it is just. And so I cannot make for myself an exception. And partly this is maybe because they want to do the right thing, which I think is a part of every or almost every human being. And partly it is also a consequence of the fear that other people will reprimand them or punish them if they don't. Because if other people are clear about what is just and they see some specific person do something that is unjust, then they will either verbally or non-verbally reprimand this other person and maybe just look at them in a criticizing way or in a disapproving way. And if most people in society look at you in a disapproving way, then that is a very uncomfortable thing. And I think I heard that disapproval and shunning, like blocking off from other people, activates the same areas in the brain as physical pain. So, which makes sense for a social animal, because as a individual of a social animal, you are dependent on living in a group. You can't live alone. Human beings are not like bears, for example, where the male bears, they just roam around in the forest alone. Human beings live in groups, and so you can't live alone. And so it makes sense that if a lot of people tell you that they don't approve of you, then that will kind of instill some existential terror in you and some fear and even pain. And so, yeah, so where was I coming from? So I think people would follow a law if it is just, even if it means some discomfort for them. That's the one part. That's the positive pull of natural law, why it is stable and functional. And then there is the negative aspect of positive law, which I touched on in the other video. And I think I will call this just natural law versus positive law 2, which is kind of a boring title, but I think this is what it will be. So just had to get that out of my head so I can keep talking. Because if people use the law as a tool to get what they want, which doesn't necessarily have to be just, then the first thing is everyone will start opposing them instinctively, because you feel, why should this person enrich themselves on my cost, just because they would like so? Like, that I don't, and people will oppose the law and will try to fight it and will try to maneuver around it, or get around it without getting caught, and then it's just the fear of being caught that makes people adhere to the law grudgingly. And so that's one of the big problems with positive law. And the other thing is, of course, that many people will start to say, hey, if you can play this game with me, then I can just as well play this game with you. And then you get these warring political fractions where each group tries to make the state pay for their own personal wishes, like, I want free childcare, I want free birth control, I want free this, I want this to be included in the mandatory medical insurance without the cost going out, of course. And then they will try to force the state or make the state pay for what they want, and then make the taxes go up for other people so that other people have to pay for their personal what they want. Yeah. And then both groups, or like 5 different groups, try that at once, and then you get this trench fight, this war of political discourse that isn't going anywhere and isn't changing anything, or at least not for the better most of the time. And so that's the real problem with the positive law. And then you get people going like, yeah, well, I only pay taxes because I can't avoid it, because I don't support like most of these laws. I think they are reprehensible or annoying or unjust. And so people try to get around. They make a special deal with some guy to come build the half of their house, and they just pay him under the table, and nobody pays taxes. And then you build this whole web of lie and evasion, and then you need even more laws to clamp down on people so that they follow the law. But the thing is, the more that people disapprove of the current law, the more they will just work around it and avoid it. And yeah, so I think these are kind of the problems with positive law. So it's one that people want to get what they want and make other people pay for it. And then, yeah, there is this great quote by some famous guy. I don't remember right now. Maybe it was like Benjamin Franklin or some guy that said, yeah, democracy is great, but it will collapse as soon as people realize that they can vote themselves the money of other people. And that's exactly what's happening today more and more. And that's exactly a good description of positive law, I think. Not necessarily, because some people also use positive law out of ideological motivation and not material motivation. So they want to, it's like in Canada and the US, where they made it a law that you can choose for yourself your sexual orientation, the pronoun you want to be addressed with, whether or not you are a man or a woman or something else, and like all these kinds of things. So they want to make their, Peterson calls it the radical constructionist view of the world, into the law. But still, it's still, you will get the war, because then you have the very conservative Christians, and why shouldn't they want to build their own view of the world into the law? And what about the atheists, and what about the Muslims and the Jews and like 10 other groups? And so it doesn't even matter if your motivation is material or like ideological. Still, when you use the law as a tool to force other people to make to do what you would like them to do, then you immediately get this war, and then maybe other people start doing the same thing, and then the war gets even worse. And so that's the one problem with positive law. And the other problem is that people have no respect for the law because they see it for what it is, which is just a tool of brute force that people want to impose their will on them. And people don't like if someone else tries to impose their will on them. They do like justice because they can understand it and feel it themselves, but they don't like if someone just imposes their will on them, and they resist and they fight and they evade and they make under the table deals with trusted people. And so you also get a fragmentation of the market, because then people will do more business with people that are closer to them because they can trust them and maneuver around annoying laws that stand in their way of their progress. And so, yeah, these are a couple of my thoughts on why positive law is a bad idea. And so I think this turned out reasonably well. I will probably leave this in. And so, yeah, this was a long answer, but I had a lot of thoughts to answer this question, so I didn't want to write that all down, because then also only maybe 3 people would read it. So yeah, I hope this was interesting as well. Please let me know what you think. Any more questions or comments are highly welcome. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on another video. Bye.